In today's episode, we're going to be going through some ways to compare your music to commercially produced music, both quantitatively and visually. Hopefully this is going to improve your mixes. KAS recently had a remix contest for their Road to Nowhere album. I entered the contest, and I lost. Sad. But I'm still really happy with how it turned out, and I think I'm going to use that song
to demo the concepts today. So there are a couple of visual tools that we can use to supplement our ear when we're mixing and mastering. There's the visual tool of the waveform directly over time. That allows us to see the effect of our compression, EQ, gain staging on the output of the wave. The second way we can compare is actually in the frequency domain, using spectrum here to visualize what's happening at each of the different frequencies. Again, reference to commercial tracks that have the same kind of dynamics that we want to have in our track. My two references here are obviously the original of the track that I'm remixing, KAS' Hell on Earth, and then we also have Woodkid's Goliath, has more of the dynamic range, yet still has the loudness and additional clarity that I want in my track. So when I'm looking between the waveforms of these three tracks, my two references and my own track, it's not that I necessarily want to just bump up the gains on mine to max them out and make them look like casts, or that I want to lessen compression until it looks more like Woodkid's. It's more that by comparing these visually, it gives me clues as to where to listen to when I'm comparing these tracks and referencing them on various speakers. You can start seeing how your tools such as compression, EQ, and gain staging start approximating some of the waveforms of the production level music in your own. When you're comparing, you're not only listening for are your loudest parts just as loud as the commercially produced track, but also is the difference between your loudest parts and kind of mid-loud parts and quieter parts kind of in proportion to those commercial tracks. If I wasn't looking at it, I wouldn't know that the sound of the KAS track was in part because of these effects that you can see on the waveform itself. If I really like some sort of distortion that I hear on the loudest parts of the KAS track, maybe this is someplace that I can start looking to see, okay, maybe some hard limiting on the very loudest parts are effective in achieving the style that I want. Again, it's all about comparing and then focusing your attention on those things that you see that are different between the tracks. So really what I do is I look at this in three sections, kind of the lows, the mids, and the highs, and see that the kind of distribution is similar to a reference that I want to sound like. So the kick and some bass line are hovering around negative 12 decibels, somewhere between the 30 and 60 hertz range. Mine has a little bit more sub bass. So that's something as a difference that then you want to listen to in particular. And so it's quite obvious I have something much lower, maybe in around 30 hertz, which is starting to be subaudible in a lot of different speakers. That's spiking, that's not in the Woodkid, and so that's now a focus area of mine when I go to listen to that on other speakers, on headphones. Another difference that I am seeing here is kind of from the 100 to 300 hertz range. That range can easily get very muddied with a collection of lots of mid and lower range instruments and sounds, and so the dip in mine is that because it's actually not muddied there? Is it because I've tried to lessen the mud and accidentally taken out too much content in those frequencies? These are all questions that came up that I would not have necessarily thought of if I was just listening to this just listening to these two tracks next to one another, that now I can use that information to go in a little bit deeper and a little bit more specific. So there you have it, a couple ways to add insights to your referencing, both visually and quantitatively. Hope it was useful to you, and I'll see you next time.